Hey, you got the thumbs up. That's working pretty well. Okay, thank you all for your patience and for being here today. I'm sure, like all of you, we're in a little bit of don't even, obviously, I don't even know what I'm saying. Being in person at a conference after 2 years is something that has been really wonderful today. And being able to engage in person, we're really pleased to be here. Today, and want to say hello to all the virtual participants as well, because we do know this is a new era of communicating with each other. There are good sides to that and there are bad sides to that. So we're here today to talk about Nueva Esperanza, a project that this team worked on together, and talk about designing for a diverse community. We were going to have Erica introduce herself first. I'm the one talking, but
I can. Let's see if we can do this clicker. Do you know how to do the clicker?
you click that.
Oh. Counterintuitive. My name is Erica Calderon, and I am the Director of Housing for Bienestar. Love that picture, let me tell you. So, and I'm really excited to be here with you all today.
Okay, and Lisa McClellan, I'm a principal at Scott Edwards Architecture.
I'm Eugenia Fama Higgins. I work at Scott Edwards Architecture. I'm originally from Argentina, but I moved to Oregon, to Portland, Oregon 10 years ago. So yeah.
And I think one thing, sorry, we'll go back. Just wanted to highlight the team that this is just an abbreviated team representation up here. Obviously, what we do takes a tremendous effort from a very large community. So today we're going to be sort of presenting a very narrow focus of this particular project, but wanted to acknowledge that. One member of the design team that's not represented on this panel is Place Landscape Architecture Studio. And we just thought that was important to note, because this project is a 6-acre site. There is a lot of landscape component to it, and they brought designers to the table that are bilingual and multicultural, and that was very important to this project as well.
And since we're doing Adams, Lisa, I see one of my partners in the audience. Hi, Liz. So I should also highlight that Nueva Esperanza was a joint venture project with our wonderful partners at Housing Development Center, or HDC, and I'm sure you're going to see a lot of them here today. So they're also not up here helping me out on this panel, but they kill it every single day on this project. So shout out to HDC.
Thank you. So we're going to do a presentation. We're going to leave plenty of time for question and answer at the end. Just wanted to show you just a kind of high level outline of how we're going to approach talking about the project and the community engagement. So just a little bit of a background and a history about the project. Nueva Esperanza started with the city of Hillsboro, who owned a parcel of land adjacent to their Parks Department facilities building and lot. It was a roughly 6-acre parcel of land. It's also adjacent to several parks and a community center, so it's really well situated in terms of amenities. They put out a public RFP asking for proposals from developers. And they had some goals. They had actually a tremendous number of goals, but we're going to focus on the design goals that they had here. They wanted to make sure that the project was integrated with the adjacent neighborhood. This is a kind of unique site in that there's industrial to the north, but there is single family and multifamily homes to the east and south. So they thought, that was very important to them, obviously. They wanted to, because of the adjacent parks, they wanted to maintain somewhat of a park-like feel to the parcel. The parcel was used for many years by the adjacent community for a dog park. they wanted an active edge along 53rd and Hidden Creek Boulevard, and protect pedestrian safety along there. And then, maximizing solar access, thinking about the adjacent communities. So there were a lot of goals sort of stated in the design, in the RFP. And as a team, we had to come up with a design response.
And then I'll take it, Lisa. So in addition to all of the goals that the city wanted to see, at Bienestar, we had to sit down and think about like what our goals were for this project. I'll just start off by saying that Bienestar was not at its best capacity when I came on, and we were looking at the Hillsboro Metro Bond project as basically being the make it or break it for the organization. We're a 40-year owner operator of affordable housing, but as maybe some of you in the room who belong to affordable housing organizations know, that you go through hard times sometimes, and it takes a dedicated team and then top leadership to keep the organization going financially. So with that said, Nathan brought me on and said, this project is super important to us, Erica, and if we don't get the project, there might not be a Bienestar in the future. And so I started from basics, which was basically having to get to know the community of Hillsboro, right? And so what you see up on your screen are leaders in Hillsboro who migrated up in 1950s or within that era. And how they came up here was through outreach from the state of Oregon, specifically Hillsboro area, Western Washington County, Cornelius, Forest Grove. And we had a huge agricultural area that needed farmers. Our farmers needed more farmers, agricultural pickers, right? So the migration started when they went down to specifically Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and found a group of Latinx, Latinos, Tex-Mex, however they choose to identify, as a perfect resource to come and help the agricultural boom in Oregon. So when I sat down with Hector told me a story of how he came up as a little boy and how they painted this idea of, come to Oregon, be a farm worker. And he said, Erika, when I thought I was coming up to Oregon, I thought I was coming up to summer camp. And he's like, because they were just like painting this beautiful green, luscious area up here in Oregon. And he's like, but when we got here, the housing conditions were horrendous, to put it nicely. They did not have indoor plumbing. They were embarrassed to go to school. They were pointed out as the kids that work in the farms. And so he said, I'm so proud that Bienestar came in and helped the farm workers in the 1980s and 90s, and that you guys are gonna give it another go, right, with this project. And he's like, so I sat down, I was like, well, then tell me, like, what do families want? What did you think that housing was gonna look like? And from there, we formed what is called the PAC, the Project Advisory Committee, because we didn't want to just hear from Hector. We wanted to hear from others from that era, right? Whose families are still very much living in Western Washington County. And through the PAC, we were able to have a series of sit-down conversations that we'll go more into later on in the presentation. But that's where this project started. This project started not just from me as being the developer on it with my partners. It started back to basics with community and what does the community need and what do they want to see in this project. It wasn't just a competitive bid, let's go after it from Bienestar's perspective.
Okay, so, excuse me. So we're going to move on to just talking about the initial design, because we did have to come up with a concept as part of this process. And so it was wonderful that Bienestar had created this project advisory committee so that we were working with community members at the beginning, even though this was still a concept. And so the concept that was created, the city had a goal of a minimum of 120 units. So this concept felt like 150 units could comfortably fit on the site and still meet the city's goals, Bienestar's goals, the community goals. And part of what we looked at was wanting it to feel like it fit with the context and the scale of the neighborhood, so that it was seen as successful by the neighbors and surrounding community as well. So designing for a diverse community as architects, and as an architect who's worked in the field of affordable housing for 30 years, that is an important aspect of community as well, obviously, is the immediate neighbors. So although we didn't engage with that community as part of this initial design concept, we were very careful and thoughtful about creating a scale of buildings that felt appropriate to the scale of the neighborhood, creating a fabric of this development that felt appropriate to the neighborhood. And also thinking about 150 families is a big development. And how do we create a sense of community with the way that we organize this development? So we decided to organize the development, breaking the scale down into 3 separate sort of plaza areas, so that would sort of break that down so that it was about 150 families per area. I mean, sorry, 50 families rather than 150 families, the opposite. So creating a sense where you had your smaller neighborhood within the larger neighborhood. So that was very important. Looking at both the city's goals with and the Metro Bond goals, but also Bienestar's goals and their outreach, recognizing the need for family-size units. And so this is something that Erica knows very much
I had
about.
to fight for those 4 bedrooms, y'all. So as our team was sitting here and we were looking at Lisa's beautiful and her team's well put together neighborhoods, you know, there was internal conversations as developers on, are 4 bedrooms really necessary? Are they needed? You know, I got pushback every day. I'm like, come on, Erica, where are you getting the information from? Later on, we're going to tell you which groups we engaged to confirm that decision. But we decided that 4 bedrooms are not just important to this project. We have 4 bedrooms in most Bienestar's portfolio, right? And we are kind of known for that. And those 4 bedrooms are like gold still. Families are looking for them. Just last winter, I got a call from the city that there is a farm workers, once again, because of the area that Bienestar works in and who our population are, who they are. There was farmers that did not make enough money this last season to migrate back to the next farming area. And I don't pretend to know where all of them are or how they migrate. So they called Bienestar because it was a family of 8 and they were needing a 4-bedroom apartment unit. So yeah, we just wanted to highlight that this was also competitive, right, against all the other developers on what kind of units you were presenting and pushing forward within your project.
We're going to go a little bit more into detail on another slide, but we wanted to, like the city, look at the city's goals of creating this vibrant pedestrian edge along 53rd and Hidden Creek. So we have 2 different building typologies to make sure that we have units that can open directly under the street and create a vibrant pedestrian network, but then also still face towards the community. So pedestrian connections, you know, safe pedestrian activity, but also creating a vibrant network of connections within the development. So if we're going to break the development down in scale to 3 separate micro neighborhoods within the larger neighborhood, what connects those neighborhoods? What commonality do they have? And so we really thought a lot about that. We thought about safe ways for kids to kind of recreate around the development, even though there were these adjacent parks, you know, smaller kids, maybe the families want to keep them close by. What are sort of tricycle tracks or scooter tracks or ways that, what's the promenade that might happen in the evenings so that neighbors go out and spend time with each other. So that was very much a part of our thought process in designing this site plan as well. No, you can go back to the buildings, yes.
Yeah, and just to talk about the two different building typologies that Lisa just mentioned, I think the intent was to have some diversity. We have like 13 buildings, and we wanted to have that sense of like walking in the interior of this neighborhood and having some identity, and also respond to the context. Like we have these walk-up apartments that have unit entries both sides, kind of like back to back. So we located these buildings along 53rd and basically at the perimeter of the site, giving the opportunity of activate the pedestrian street basically level, and the having access from the plazas was giving these nice, vibrant activities to the interior of the project as well. And these particular buildings have identical units at the first, second, and third floor. They are walk-up apartments, so we have shared stairs, and the second and third floor are going to be shared, like 4 units are going to be shared one access. This particular building also, the intent was to have traditional siding that was like merging nice in the existing neighborhood, but we have like a pattern that is more unique and vibrant colors that was attractive for the community members that we presented to. And we can go to the next slide to talk about the other typology that we call the townhouses over flats. This building has townhouses at the second level, so each unit has a unique entry, and it's like a raised entry that gives a unique pedestrian feeling to that is different than the other typology, and give us in the main level the opportunity of have different unit types. At the main level is where we have most of our 4 bedrooms units, and some of these buildings also have the shared laundry rooms and some common areas like the mailboxes as well.
Are you advancing, or am I even doing anything? Okay, great. I'll stop pretending then. Okay, thank you. No, that's fine. Just, I was probably just indicating to you I needed the next slide. So the one thing before we go to the next, each plaza, so feedback, we had some really robust conversations with the PAC about that, and how it really resonated, the idea of creating smaller communities within a larger community centered around an open space that could be shared. And so Henny is going to go into that more in the future, but a lot of great conversations about activities that could take place, and how the neighbors could interact with each other with that shared open space, including shared laundry. So we were very deliberate in creating the shared laundry room at the entry to each of the plazas or colonias. And that is immediately adjacent to small play areas, so that those laundry areas can overlook the play areas, and that kind of engagement can happen. And then we put the mailboxes adjacent to the laundry room. So really thinking about where places where community can come together and neighbors can really get to know each other. Okay, next slide.
Okay, this is the community engagement process. This is what we're here to talk about a little bit more, right? Like the meat of everything. So I was having a conversation with Lisa earlier this week when we were putting this presentation together. And I've told her that like the hardest thing that I've learned in development as a developer, and also doing the community engagement and doing it well, is getting ahead of your architect in the sense of like the next move, right? So I really want to praise Scott Edwards for leaning in and listening to me and to Bienestar when we brought them to the table. She was willing to come in, and before my architect even put pen to paper, she sat down with the project advisory committee, right? And that's what I wanted, because a lot of the times you get going on these projects and you pick your architects and you start putting your team together, and they start listening and they start having this other idea already, right? Like, oh, what's the site? How many acres? Where's it at? Oh, I think we can do that. And they're going, right? And so I had to bring them in and kind of just say like, listen, Lisa, I really want you to take your time, which she did. In the evening, that was another important point in community engagement, right? Is like, when can they engage in this process? Not when do I need them to, right? So we heard loud and clear from our community that anytime after 5 and 5:30, yes, they wanted to come in. Yes, they wanted to sit down and meet Lisa and her team. And Eugenia, I point out Lisa because she's right next to me, so I don't want to leave you out. But the trick here was before they started coming up with the design, I wanted them to listen to what I had listened to, and I really wanted them to lean into what Hector was saying. What Hector told her during that time, and another reason why we broke out these areas was because he started giving his story and saying, like, you know, in Latino America, and also when he came up here, we know each other for the area we live in, right? So if you're ever in Mexico, I can only speak to Mexico, I'm from Mexico. It's like, oh, you live in Colonia Valle de la Hacienda, or you live in Colonia, you know, Las Palomas. And so Hector started laughing and he's like, yeah, when we moved up here as Latino kids, he's like, you live in the blue camp and you live in the yellow camp. And they're referring to like the farmers, right? And what farm they worked on. And so I really appreciate that you listened to that. And we just realized at that moment that it was super important and that community wanted it to be broken down, you know, because nowadays in Portland, what you see are what are called corridor buildings, high density together, but like you can't really do community in that, or maybe you can, I don't know, I shouldn't say that, I don't develop in Portland. But in Hillsboro, we knew that we had space to work with this. So what I wanted to give everybody in the room here today was just a timeline that I got from several conversations with my team and always being ahead of it, being like, okay, Lisa, what are we going into next? Oh, schematic design. And what do you need to hear from community and schematic design, right? Like, is that more about like the design of the units? Is that more like, are we doing community room? What are we doing within that area? And then, you know, learning that by the time you get to design development, like it's done. We can't change units. Do not do a community engagement right now, Erica. And they're going to come tell me that they want the bedrooms bigger. Like that ship sailed, right? And so here's just a timeline that we wanted to highlight. Say like development is fast. Development is hard. And it's working. And then, you know, trying to be also considerate to the community you're trying to engage. What were all the struggles, but things that I think that we did well on this project. So I can't really see that far on here on where we're at. Forming the pact was one, and they helped us. They actually named the project. Bienestar did not even name the project. You know, well, Nathan tried to, who's my CEO. He came up with a lot of great ideas, but he did not name it. It was actually named by the community, and it was given a name before we even submitted to the RFP proposal. Like we knew what we wanted, and we lived and breathed this project starting in October of 2019. And the competitive bid for it, or the RFP, as you all know, didn't even come out until March, the end of March of 2020. But we were ready. We're ready to go, and we had already all that community engagement done to help us get there. And then moving forward, when we were selected to continue forward working on this project is when we started forming other groups, and we'll dive into those, I think, next.
Yeah, I wanted to just our firm, Scott Edwards Architecture, we're a very collaborative firm, and our motto is people first, design forward. And so in our mind, you put people in the center of the design process, that good design comes forward. So we take this approach on any project, but this project, it was wonderful to already have Bienestar having done some of this initial work to have that in place, because as Erica said, things move very fast. And when you do something like a concept design for a competitive RFP, community engagement is something that usually doesn't happen. So it was wonderful to be able to get that input even at that early stage. We did tell Erica, yes, when do we need the feedback? When is it not too early and when is it not too late? And it came actually right at the beginning of design development. This project was needed to go through land use approval, which included design review. So once it went through that process, we couldn't change anything. So we did want that feedback to be meaningful. And so most of the meetings, and I know this timeline is very small, and you probably can't see any of it. But most of the meetings were set up right at the beginning of design development, so that we had developed alternate unit options. We had thoughts, we had developed the site plan a little bit farther. We had started on the community building, but weren't really sure, exactly what the design was. So things were far enough along to get meaningful feedback, but not so far along that that feedback couldn't be integrated. And that was really key for us. And I think one other thing I just wanted to again, we're a firm because community engagement is sort of core to our values. We understand that you can't do it during normal business hours, as Erica said. So the engagements happened in the evenings, they happened on a Saturday, and that's just part of what we do. And we understand that as par for course. You're going to get more meaningful engagement if you make it happen in the ways and times that is workable for the community you're trying to serve. I'll also note that the RFP came out and COVID protocols, all of a sudden COVID happened. And so, our normal approach to community engagement wasn't really possible. And so again, because of the partnerships that Bienestar created, we were able to still get meaningful community engagement through alternate means. So I think that was just really important to note as well, that early work that happened pre-COVID really helped us during COVID.
Next slide. So here's some questions that when we decided, these were no longer questions to the PAC. Once the PAC did their job in naming the project and really helping design the outline of it, we actually reached out to other groups. Bienestar has a very well-known to affordable housing owners team called Promotores. And what Promotores is at each one of our development or housing projects right now, we have somebody from there that lives there that is advocates and is like in a leadership role, and that helps our community or our community services team engage with that property really, really fast, right? So every single property has this person called a promotora to serve it. Actually, in Nueva Esperanza, because we're expecting a diverse community to live here, we're calling them community promotores. I forgot the name. We're calling them. We haven't really used it yet, but it's a different name to be more inclusive on that. But we grabbed the promotores from across our portfolio and asked them to come in and help us answer some of the questions that you see right here, right? So one of them was, do you prefer a separate kitchen and living area or an open floor plan? Do you prefer bathtubs or showers? And what would you add to the laundry rooms? What's missing? Are you interested in gardening? These are all questions that Lisa asks me. And then I sit there and I'm like, yeah, that's a lot of questions that I don't know because I'm not going to live at Nueva, right? So we engaged promotoras to come in and to help us with that. And they also brought in their families, and it was really nice. It was through Zoom. I blocked that out of my head, COVID. And their families got involved. We actually had more people coming online and their kids and stuff. So it was that was great to see the participation was there.
I think that is one of the maybe positive aspects of community engagement in the era of Zoom was there isn't a big equity issue in terms of access to technology. But if that is solved, then it often allows more people to participate because they don't have to travel. They don't have to think about childcare. They can do it in the evening from their own home. And so that's kind of fascinating to think about that, as long as, again, there's that access to technology. The other thing is, Eugenia is from Argentina, as she stated, and we had at the time another Latina architect from Honduras. And so they were able to lead this engagement in Spanish, which was much, as an architect who has worked with translators and other community engagement efforts, there's something gets lost in the translation, there's the lag, and it's not a true engagement. And so being able to truly engage in the native language was much more meaningful.
Yes, I agree. I was feeling like the participation was like amazing. I was not sure what to expect, especially we were like all in Zoom and it was right at the beginning in a way of like working from home. And definitely people were like very open in sharing the reasons of why they prefer one thing to the other and not feeling like, I don't know how the other person will react. It was maybe the understanding that culturally we will get that too, and it could be similar. And also some people were able to write this down in the Zoom chat. So I think it was like a great experience, like, and a good way of gathering all the information. Yeah.
Next slide, I think.
Oh, no, Somali. Oh, yeah, you're right. Next slide,
Yeah,
please.
I'm
We're
ahead.
looking at ours over here.
I'm cheating. I'm looking at what slide's coming up next. So during my outreach efforts at Bienestar, we knew that there is high Latinx population in Western Washington County, specifically Hillsboro. What I didn't know is who else was going to live there, right? And how was this project also going to serve those communities? And what I learned through research and speaking to other leaderships within Hillsboro was they said, did you know that there's a high Somali community that is recently moving into the area? And I didn't. And so we reached out and we were able to connect with a group that we already had a previous connection with, Somali Empowerment Circle. And we brought them in to help us. And it was actually through my communications with them that I learned that they hate the open floor plan. Like, and so that's like the worst thing I wanted to hear, right? Is being like, build it and they will come. They let me know, oh, great, you have 3 bedrooms and you have 4 bedrooms and you have like, 63 bedrooms. And I'm like, yeah, like you guys, you'll live here, right? And they're like, are you doing open floor plan? Because if it is, we're not in. And I was like, why? And so we learned through the community engagement session with them the reason why. And it was very interesting to hear them talk to me about their culture and just learning that the women wear the hijab. Did I pronounce that right? Hijab. I'm going to butcher. Sorry, guys. And that often when they have guests come over, they're in the kitchen. They want to take that off. They can't take that off in an open plan design because the men are in the living room. And they often want to taste their spices because they cook a lot with spices. I mean, we have to think about both these populations are heavy cookers, right? They're not the ones going out to eat all the time. And so Lisa and I was just like, well, we learned this through community engagement. We need to figure out how to, at least in those larger bedroom or larger apartment units, 3 bedrooms and 4 bedrooms, space out the kitchen from the living room area. And we did a good job that I think you're going to talk about later on and show them on doing that. So we learned that through them. We learned other cultural aspect or other cultural differences that we have a slide on too through there. But this is just a picture of us coming together. So anyways, I know we'll take questions later. I think we can move on to the next slide.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to talk. Erica mentioned a couple of the things that we heard. We decided we're going to talk about what we heard and show you the design response at the same time. So we're going to organize it as what we heard about the site, what we heard about buildings, what we heard about units, and sort of how we were able to take that feedback and incorporate it into the design. So Henias, if you go to the next slide, is going to start with the site.
Yeah, so some of the feedback that we were able to incorporate was having benches and good lighting, appropriate lighting along the site. And this is a big site again. So our initial concept of having different paths with different characters was reinforced with this idea of having like benches and a special light along the path, the different paths that we have. We have one that we call El Paseo, that it connects the site north and south, and the Alameda, that is more like a organic path because we were able to preserve existing trees and we are adding new trees, so they have a completely different feeling. And in both, we were able to capture this feedback of providing more seating. And also at the end of the Alameda, we have a community garden and a fenced dog park. The community garden was something that both groups were very interested in, a way of like sharing culture in a way, connecting, meeting more neighbors, and also an educational opportunity as well. And the dog park was something that one of the group was all about having dogs, and a lot of people loved that idea, but the Somali especially was not liking that interaction, and you can explain that if you want to.
I was going to say, can I say something about that dog park too? Can you guys hear me? That was also an internal fight with Bienestar. So never have we allowed pets at any of our properties, but everybody tends to have a pet at our property, and sometimes 2 or 3, right? Because they go and get the companion. Shar, I'm looking at you, our asset manager up here. So this was going to be the project after we heard it. You know, I was like, do you guys want pets? Say no, say no, say no. They're like, yes, everybody wants a dog. Everybody has a dog. And so I'm like, all right, we gotta put in a dog park then, because we're going to allow it. And so, yeah, that was just another internal struggle that we heard from community.
Yeah, we went back and forth of how to address the dog situation, and ended up being like a good spot. We have a fenced dog park that will address the necessities or needs for both population. Yeah.
I think the main thing, the main thing that was surprising, the Somali community, when they heard dogs were going to be allowed, were not excited. The Somali community does not embrace dogs. We were told the saliva is seen as unclean. And so there was a lot of concern that dogs would be allowed in the property. And so having a fenced dog area, so an explicit place that your dog can be recreated, and there'll be operationally signs to sort of at the big lawn saying, you know, no dogs allowed off leash. So that was something that really resonated. When Eugenio mentioned, you know, making sure there was plenty of light, when we talked about the Alameda, which has the mature trees and this nice sort of shade cover, and the idea of maybe promenading at night, the Somali community said many members wear dark clothing, and so therefore feel like they, you know, want to be seen at night because they're not wearing bright reflective clothing. So that specific wasn't just make sure there's plenty of light, but there's plenty of light, make sure there's more light because of this reason, was some interesting feedback that we received.
Yeah, if you want next. This is a render of the current design of the Alameda that is tied to this open green area where we have more like a nature playground, and we can see the community building that open to that space as well.
Both communities were really interested in the open lawn, especially for soccer or futsal. So that was a commonality that both communities had.
If you don't make it, they will make it.
Yeah, exactly.
Somewhere to do it.
Yes. And here we are trying to point the different colonias or plazas that we have along the side. Everyone was asking if, like, can we have barbecue areas? Can we have some outdoor cookings and tables? And we were able to have this in each plaza. Piñata poles was something that both groups were like super excited, and we didn't know that they share that interest and want to celebrate that way. So we have that too. Play areas organized by ages, like as we have, as Lisa mentioned before, we were able to have share laundry rooms at each plaza or colonia. So we wanted to create a connection, a visual connection with the outdoor from the laundry room too. And we have like a small playground out there. So the idea is like if the family is doing laundry and they have to wait, they express that most of the time they want to wait in the laundry room, the kids might be able to play and they can be safe. So yeah, that's another thing. We just talk about the open green and having an opportunity for soccer.
Can I expand a little bit on just, so the barbecue areas were also because there's townhomes over flats, and the townhomes weren't going to have outside, you know, and we know that people that come in and live in apartment units will claim ownership over, you know, what they see is theirs. And so therefore I was just like, well, we don't even have patios for a million reasons on these units. So that was another thing, like you take something away from community, you take outside to the people that live in a townhome upstairs and they don't have outside anymore. And so then we have to give it through, in my opinion, strive to give it through back to them in other ways. So that's where we really push to have barbecues open so that they can go out and grill even if you don't have, a front lawn that you might try to claim over. With the piñata area, so in my past work, I worked at Hacienda CDC, and I remember one time walking out in the properties, and they would make their own piñata areas, and then I see Jacqueline in the background here, wonderful Jacqueline. Jacqueline and I would sit there and watch them, but then they would get policed, for lack of a better word, to not do what they were doing, right? And so those were just ideas again, and being like, okay, they're going to have birthday parties, piñatas is a huge thing, where are we going to give them a piñata area that is acceptable before they find a piñata area that they're going to go ahead and do. And the other last thing that I'm going to touch on that is unique that I saw for the first time when I came to Bienestar in our portfolio was the last one called the boot washing station. And we have that thanks to Lisa, who also designed a project out in Forest Grove for us called Juniper Gardens 1 and 2. And due to the agricultural work and pesticides getting on the boots, we wanted to be proactive. And so we incorporated a boot washing station. And we wanted to bring that idea to Nueva Esperanza for a couple more reasons. This is not a farm worker project, meaning it's not required to be a farm worker to live here, where in our other projects that is the case. But, we often see people still working as landscapers and working still with those chemicals, right, where boot washing station would work for them. A lot of people right now are in construction. I go out on site to both of our projects that we have in construction, and all I see is people of color and, concrete and just other things that they could be tracking into their homes that might not be safe was just a good idea. And then also going through COVID and just knowing that you have an outside area at the beginning. I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people were just worried about, like, where do I strip down? Where can I not bring this into my house at? And so for all those reasons, we decided to carry on with the boot washing station at Nueva Esperanza.
And one more thing that I want to mention in these slides that we are calling over there the race intersection. Safety wasn't concerned when we all were talking about kids or everyone walking through this paseo south to north to get to the community building, or going across the street from the townhouses that are located at the east of the site across the street to get to the colonia or plaza. So the race intersection was something to slow down vehicles and also an art opportunity for the community to get together. So that's another thing that we were excited about. Next one. This is a render of one of the colonias or plazas where you can see the special lighting and the trees side by side that give a special character, the small playground, and the windows in the lower portion of the building is the laundry room. So we can see this connection that we just mentioned. Next one. Now we can talk about about the design response in the buildings itself.
So the community building will be located at the northern edge of the Great Lawn, at the end of I think it's fine. At the end of the Paseo. So as you come into the community from the south and promenade kind of up past the other colonias and plazas, it's kind of the destination at the end. And you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So, some of the feedback that we received, I think Ehenia already mentioned, we have a larger laundry room here in the community building because it is closer to more units at the northern end of the site. But we did receive feedback from both groups that, I'm going to back up with laundry and say that there will be hookups for laundry in the 3 and 4 bedroom units in this development, but nonetheless, we recognize that that doesn't mean that everyone even families will have washers and dryers, and certainly the ones in 2 bedrooms won't. So the laundry rooms are going to be critical places for community interaction. And so we made them generously sized. We provided seating options in addition to just folding tables. That's where community bulletin boards are going to be. And as we said earlier, they're immediately adjacent to the mail area. So we sort of see them as these like micro hubs for the community. Ventilation, a lot of people complain that their laundry rooms that they're in are very stuffy. So we made sure that we had operable windows. So that was important as well. The community room was really interesting. We almost always put a kitchen in. There was a lot of conversations among community members. Is a stove really necessary? And ultimately, even though many people who might be going to a gathering in a community room might be preparing the food in their own unit, they need a place to warm it up. We often design the kitchen as part of the community room, but in this instance, it's going to be more flexible as a community room to have it separate. That's also going to be, from a property management standpoint, better as well. We can actually provide a more functional kitchen that way rather than just have a kitchenette at the end of a community room. And so that was really valuable feedback we got both from community and from property management and resident services. And then by having the kitchen separate with a pass-through window, that means that resident services and the leasing office can actually also access that, which is very nice, and recognizing that they will also be members of the community as well. And then that indoor-outdoor connection and hard surface flooring. Some people live in communities that have carpeting in their community room, and they're like, no, we want to practice like dancing, and we want to have events where we need that hard surface floor, and we want to also be able to spill outside. So we have a plaza in addition to the big lawn immediately outside of the community room. And I know you have some comments as well.
Yeah, dancing specifically for quinceañeras and getting ready for quinceañeras. And just the kitchen, the reason they wanted to warm it up is because Latinos are always late to parties, right? And so we need to heat up the food again for those of us that are late. I think one thing that designing the community room was one of my favorite parts of Nueva Esperanza. And I also engaged our maintenance team from across the portfolio to help us with this, with the functioning of it. So there's 3 different people who are really going to be using community room. It's our resident services, it's our property management company, and it's our maintenance team, right? And so we really leaned in bringing them to the table and telling us how that was going to work out and how they were going to work together on this. I think one thing that I added that was separate was understanding Bienestar's portfolio and hearing my maintenance team say, you know, we could really lower expenses on vendors, Erica, if I had space to work on a broken door, if I had space to put, you know, XYZ items, if I had like a little workshop. And Bienestar, half of our portfolio, well, not half, but close to it, is in Hillsboro, and then the other one is Forest Grove and Cornelius. And so I took the opportunity through this project to incorporate a maintenance room or a workshop up on the top corner of this, to not just work for them, not just to do work on Nueva Esperanza, but for our maintenance team from all over within Hillsboro to come to this workshop and be able to work and hopefully lower operation expenses on the rest of our portfolio. So.
Next slide.
And this,
oh wait,
you can. Yeah.
I just want to acknowledge too, I'm a time watcher. So I see we're getting close to 4 o'clock, and I just want to let you know we are going to be, we probably have less than 10 minutes, so we still will have plenty of time for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. These slides just show how at the early stage we were having the meetings with the PAC, and we were like showing them even color options for buildings, and we were trying to understand if they wanted to have something bold or like more like the contrast or less contrast in the buildings. And they were able to comment in the 2 typologies, and they always went back, and I would say like everybody likes better the last option, like the top right option with more color. So we were able to keep this in the final design as well. Everybody was liking the idea of having good cedar at the main entrances as well. So we have that as well. And the images below, we were like asking about like colors at the front door, if they were like wanted that idea or not. So we definitely showed them all the options possible. And this is a summary. And we were able to convey their ideas, and the final design had a lot of their input. We talk a little bit about the two typologies. This is just to recap and show the two kind of like elevations showing the walk-up apartments and the townhouses over flats. The one to the left, the walk-up apartments, we have like the renders below that shows the shared entrances, that we have like more colors and is inviting, and they were responding great to that idea as well. And you can see the raised entries for the townhouses over flat to the right. And now we are going to talk about the units in these buildings, because we were able to have a diversity of unit types because of these typologies as well. So if you want to go to the next one, this is an example of a 2-bedroom unit where one of the feedback that we had is like most of the time with 2 bedrooms, having 1 full bathroom is not enough. So in most of the cases, we were not able to have 2 bathrooms, but yes, we were able to have in some units 1 bathroom and a half. And in most of them, this example that we are showing and highlighting here that has like a separated vanity. So at least family members can be using one portion of the bathroom and the other at the same time. And that was like one of the biggest things that they asked, and we were able to accomplish in these 2 bedrooms.
Next slide.
This is for the 3, but applies also for the 4 bedrooms. In general, for the bigger units, when we have 2 bedrooms, the desire was to have a bathtub in 1 bathroom and a shower in the other. And in this example that we have the townhouses, they wanted to have the shower in the farthest kind of like or more independent area of the house. So in the upper level, we have the shower.
So recognizing, I think we got feedback, many multi-generational households using the larger units. And so recognizing elders would have an easier time with the shower, and then therefore saying, and we would give the bedroom farthest away from kind of the hubbub to the elder. And so therefore, could you please put the shower bathroom,
yes,
in that location?
Yeah. And we are highlighting here the ability of having the kitchen separated from the living and dining area. And also we can see the washer and dryer hookups that we are providing as well.
We received feedback that that it would be nice to have that near the kitchen dining area for multitasking, or for the Somali community, again, sort of recognizing that maybe that work could be done not front and center, but back more in the private family area of the unit.
And this is the 4 bedroom units where the same thing, we are able to have like a shower in 1 bathroom and the tub in the other one, but also we have the opportunity of having more counter space. And the question was like, are you interested in having like 2 sinks or more counter space? And they really wanted to have more counter space. So we were able to do that as well. And in this case, the kitchen and dining is separated from the living room.
In this case, there's actually, these are the 4 bedroom units. We have 4 of them. We actually have a sliding door that can truly separate it. In the 3 bedroom townhome that was shown previously, there's just a hallway that truly separates it. So we don't actually have the sliding door, but here there's the ability to have a family welcome someone into their home and close that door and not have them see any part of the back of the house, as it were, the private family area.
Yeah, and they also enjoy the idea of having, like, by having a real partition, they feel that they are gaining like another room itself, because they are able to have like different activities. So that was very well received. So, here, we can. I stole Erica's.
I think we just want to summarize that between the Latinx community and the Somali community, there were common themes. Absolutely, large desire for large units, multi-generational households, the desire for the separation of the kitchens to the living area, sometimes for privacy with the Somali community. With the Latinx community, received the feedback just to kind of keep the smells and everything out of the front of the house. And so there was that, the bathrooms, laundry rooms, similar. And as Erica mentioned, the piñata poles, it was really interesting to see that that was something that both communities, at least the immigrant Somali community, was utilizing and wanted. Where they differed, we've already mentioned the Somali community not being, not embracing dogs. And then the Latinx community asking for the boot watching station. So it was really, it was interesting to see the commonalities. It was also really important to understand the differences and see where we can balance the design to meet the community's needs, all communities' needs. Next slide. And so lastly, we just want to kind of summarize that we feel that, you know, both communities were brought to the table early. They were able to engage meaningfully in the design. And what we didn't mention is that Bienestar did follow up with all of the community members after the engagement to show them similar presentation that we were showing you, how their feedback was incorporated. So this just didn't go out into the void and they're not left to wonder, did I waste my time?
They're actually still partners. So they're going to be they're going into the next phase of Nueva Esperanza when we get there, which is they're going to help us lease up. So they're going to be referral partners so that they can truly be a part of the project and know that they championed those changes, and then therefore can also be able to speak to their community members looking for housing, what they can expect in this project.
So thank you. So I think we have now at least 20 minutes for questions and answers. Yeah.
I would just like to say, if anyone has any questions, just think about it. Anyone?
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. Can you talk a little bit about how the PAC was formed, where those folks, how they were recruited, and how you continue to maintain that group?
The PAC on Nueva. Honestly, our CEO of Bienestar, he had more of more connection with local leaders in Hillsboro before I did when I came on. So he just introduced me to a couple of the long activist leaders within Hillsboro who've been championing affordable housing for quite some time, and knew that they had a deep connection with not only people that live in Hillsboro who are also looking for affordable housing, but that's basically how I got connected with Hector. And but we also went to like local organizations. Centro Cultural had there was some of their members up there, and then so that's how we formed it at the very beginning, because we didn't, you got to think, when we first engaged the project advisory committee, I didn't know if we were going to have the project or not, right? It's competitive. So it was just kind of like, hey, can you come in and talk to us? We have to develop an idea to compete for at this site, but I don't want to do that. I don't want Lisa to do that. I want the community to do that. So it was just kind of like ad hoc. Who do we know? Let's bring them in. Let's go. Let's sit down with them. They actually, because of the time commitment to it, and for as long as it takes to get Nueva to a certain, point where, okay, we're good on design, we didn't want to just keep using the same people over and over with that. We wanted to be respectful of their time. So the pact led us up until the first design for Lisa, answering her questions, understanding who was going to be living here, and making sure that we knew that, two major groups. And then they named the project, and then the pact stopped, right? And then we formed a different pact, which was my property management company, specifically property managers, to help us make sure that even what community was telling us what residents want, that it was also going to work for them, because they're the ones at the end of the day that have to like run the project, right? And that makes sure they're there all day, day to day. So we engaged them, and then we also engaged just like our residents through the promotoras model to tell us what they wanted in the apartment units themselves, because they currently live in affordable housing, right? And so we wanted to get their perspective. So we had different packs. We only called out and highlighted one. So it just depends. That's why that timeline I tell you going through it was so important to understanding like whose perspective should we be getting right now. And even though you can get lots of different perspectives, whose should outweigh the others, right? And that's challenging in community engagement, but it's also what what gives you a strong project at the end of the day.
So was the PAC and the promotores, I hope I pronounced that right, are they paid or are they volunteers?
No, we paid them. They were paid.
Thank you so very much. It's a fascinating presentation. I am just wondering, it's a 3-storied walk-up building. So is there any issue came up from your community engagement process related to accessibility?
No, accessibility. So it's interesting, designing for a more suburban site where you're doing distributed buildings that are 3 stories, that's the height limit. You are not going to have elevators. This wasn't specifically targeted to seniors, but all of the ground floor units are fully visitable, and 5% are fully accessible, with an additional 2% that are accessible to those with sensory disabilities. So, and the site is fully accessible as well. So that is one of those interesting things with the Fair Housing Act. If there is no elevator, then that doesn't need to be accessible. So it is an interesting approach to building typology. One larger elevator building would have made every single unit accessible, but would not have necessarily been the right approach and successful approach what the city would want to see.
Another thing is, when like I am working with Salazar Architects, so we also do lots of community engagement.
Yes.
So one issue always came up, even though it's accessible, we always answered that way you just answered. But the thing people, ask about, like, probably we have, lots of grocery bags, so
Yes.
even though I can access, I can use the stairs, but it's very hard for me to go up with, hands full of grocery bags. So
Yeah, so we did make some decisions too about the 3-story walk-up. So the most typical design approach to the 3-story walk-up that you'll see everywhere is an open breezeway. So you have exterior stairs, they may be protected from the rain, but if it's windy, blowing. And so we showed 2 options to Bienestar and Housing Development Center, one with the typical breezeway and one with an enclosed stair. And very quickly, it was decided that it was more equitable to create that enclosed stair, that at least you get inside, you're inside into a conditioned environment. And so at least, therefore, yes, you're still going up potentially 2 flights of stairs to get to your unit, but you're in a conditioned environment. The townhomes over flats, one of the reasons why we added that as a building typology and not just doing the walk-ups is that the larger units, the 3-bedroom townhouses, you have to go up 1 flight. You can walk into your door immediately from your stoop. You have to go up a flight of stairs. Again, you're in your unit, you're at your kitchen before you might go up to the bedroom level. So we wanted to provide a variety of unit types on the site of these 150 units. And that's one of the reasons why we did both building typologies.
thank you so very much.
I just want to add one thing, that we were like also conscious about parking and how close they are to different buildings. We were trying to be fair of like the distance of parking to the different buildings typologies, and always trying to have the more accessible units like closer to the parking as well. So that was something that was a little bit challenging, but also was responding well with the idea of like breaking the big neighborhood in 3 neighborhoods and providing diversity, and also trying to be fair. Yeah.
You have any more questions?
For the architects and for the nonprofit, when we've learned from older projects of like certain features that don't work. And so then when there's time for the intervention of like, hey, we really want these things, or we really don't want those things. On the community side, I feel like we're not as involved with the housing part and the development and the architecture. So our feedback might be gained like after that tipping point of like, it's too late to make these changes. So I'm wondering like hot tips and tricks on ways to really advocate for features to be removed from a project when it might feel too late, or for, like on the architect side of like, what things can the community or the resident services teams bring to like really get it across of like, this is going to be a disaster, please don't do this. And then we're no, it makes sense, do this way. That's what I'm looking for.
That's a good question. For the first part of your question, I don't know how you peel it out once it's done. I wouldn't want to be having that conversation with my team, right? It's going to be, you're going to get a lot of pushback, but I think I knew that going into this, and the only the tip that I would get is like, get ahead of that, right? And that's the hardest part in this industry is like, how do you get ahead of that when you're writing, your application, well, all your applications, getting all your funding, like putting the whole project together, like at what intervals can you do in community engagement? What we did at Bienestar, and the only way we were able to really successfully pull that off is I had a community engagement coordinator at the organization, and all she did during, from conception through NOFA through 4% was she mobilized and helped me get all of these together. She also did a great job that we didn't highlight on engaging Adelante Mujeres, which was, we didn't just want to hear from the community. We also needed to engage our partners, right? Like our other community partners that are championing Bienestar right now. And it was just like, do we keep doing community engagements over? Do we keep doing Zoom? People were getting zoomed out, like there's just so much going. I was getting zoomed out, on, just to be honest with everybody, right? So she's like, you know what? If now we're looking at landscape design, and it's important to do landscape design, and your partners and your architects, like what kind of playground are we going to do? And now I'm like, I don't know, I'm burnt out on this. We did it through a survey, and if I didn't have that engagement coordinator, I don't know, I feel like a lot of what we learned probably would have been missed, and it would have been too late, going to your point, right? But because I had that person there, and she did, okay, I'm going to keep motivating community engagement. I'm going to do it through a survey now. So we don't have to ask you, please come and sit in for an hour and a half. It was, fill this out and we're going to send you $100, because we still value your voice and we want you to engage, but it doesn't always have to be like that. I don't feel like I'm answering your other question on like, how do you like take things out if it's a disaster? I don't know. I really did know who I needed to plan for. So like the community room, I told Lisa, I was just like, listen, that's not going to be so heavily voiced by residents. That's going to be my resident service coordinator who's going to be doing the activities in there. That's going to be my maintenance guy who's going to be working in there. And that's going to be my property manager. And, if there's other Bienestar employees who are going to hold classes there, yeah, but like the heavy hitters in that were those people. So I think it was just like forward thinking of who needs to be involved in this. And then more importantly, when do they need to be involved? And then it's like, how do you involve them? Does it have to be Zoom, or can it be through a survey? But the secret is community engagement coordinator.
And I don't know if this directly responds to your question, but we as architects, as designers, we need to go back and look at our projects, and we need to learn from our projects, and we need to learn what didn't work and why. And so that's on us as well. And so that's one thing, having designed affordable housing now for over 20 years. You see how things change, and you learn from your mistakes. Not to say that the building industry is always changing, and there's a lot to keep up on, but it's also, we need to bring that to the table as well as designers.
Our portfolio is really old. So we didn't have a lot of things to go off of, like those. I think there's maybe a question in there.
Thank you. Following up on something you brought up, Erica, that there's sometimes really hard conversations about internal priorities and taking all this feedback and kind of coming up with what is most important. And were there things that you discovered that you really wanted to do but couldn't because there was some sort of trade-off on cost or efficiency or all the other things that in affordable housing keep you sometimes from doing what it is you would want to do in an ideal world? If you could talk a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, it started with the 4 bedrooms. So at the very beginning, you know, I think that anybody who's worked with me might say that I'm very passionate and I have a strong personality. I think that to make those hard decisions, I like to do a pros and cons list a lot of the time. And because there's so many different perspectives, right, that come in on it. Could you just repeat your question one more time, Ryan?
Is it working? There we go. Things that you really wanted to make work in the project, priorities you heard that you couldn't reconcile, things you couldn't make work from a design perspective or a financial perspective, and sort of how you weigh all those competing priorities and trade-offs. I mean, that's a big question.
I'll bring up one of our issues from a design standpoint. So the separated bathrooms and the 2 bedrooms. You know, families can really you can have 5 people in a 2-bedroom, and 1 bathroom is tough. OHCS says you must only have 1 bathroom in a 2-bedroom. So I thought it was, you know, the idea of trying to separate out part of the bathroom was pretty exciting. Really, what you probably want to separate out is the toilet and the sink, and then the shower or tub area being separate. So if someone's taking a long shower, you know, what we found is that you need a separate exhaust fan for both those rooms. So not only are you taking up the real estate to create 2 separate rooms, but you also have added layers of cost that we first initially didn't think through. So that's one reason why we ended up with the somewhat separated bathroom, but not in the original ideal way. It was a compromise.
I feel like I got a lot of things so far. But no, I can't think of anything else. I know that battle. But yeah, I know. Do we have any more questions? You're going to let us go early. Oh.
Thanks, Trish.
This is working? Yeah, okay. Okay, so from what, excellent presentation, that was excellent. And so as I hear all this, the word that came across that was challenging, especially with the diverse community and how to create that. So just a general question that I have overall, what would you say to someone who is potentially going to start a development project? What best practices would you give that individual so that they can maybe know ahead of time, hey, this is a good thing to think about before you start a project like this?
That's a good question.
So I think the early work that Bienestar did to me really resonated. They had relationships within the community even before the work truly began. And as designers, we talk about like how can we think about maybe how can we build relationships earlier on so that we're brought in earlier, but in other ways we can even as designers create like pretend projects, you know, like work through scenario planning. But doing thoughtful work ahead of time, affordable housing is funded in such a bizarre way with, even if you aren't doing a competitive RFP like that, you're sort of hustling for this funding application oftentimes. And it's not the best way to do design, and it's not the best timeline for community engagement. So having relationships in place, even if you don't have a project coming up, and building relationships within the community, to me seemed to be something that was different with this project. Because we do, as I've said, we've done a tremendous amount of affordable housing design, but that maintaining those connections. I was asked when I gave a presentation once about designing for nonprofits and for underrepresented communities, how do I avoid implicit bias? And I can, but what I can do when I design is I can work with those communities directly. They know what they need. I just need to hear it as a designer, and we need to hear it as designers. So I think that's kind of my main thing is you need to do that work early on. You can't just do it on the fly and have it be meaningful.
Yeah, you said it well. I think the only thing that I'll add to that, if there's a ray of hope, is once you do it, like in our case, we documented everything. So we have database now, right? So as we move forward to our new projects, we're not starting from scratch again. We learned the timeline. We learned how to have the conversations with the architects, all architects that we're going to engage, to tell them this is important to us. And this is how we want to work before you even put pen to paper. We want to have a sit down conversation with you about who we're going to design for, whether it be seniors, whether it be working families, whether it be farm workers, whoever it is, so that they can understand that like we did all of that work and we'll continue to do that work. And it's important to us. And I think that I'm happy that we have that database now, because we're not going to have to, we don't have the engagement coordinator with us anymore right now, but we have all of that information. And now it's just going back and like fact checking to make sure that what we heard on this project is still carrying forward. I will say with those 4 bedrooms, because they are so dear to me and my team's here, I saw more people walk in. Now we created what's called an interest list, as we're not ready for lease up. We're not ready for holding till fall of 2023. What we did is we put an interest list, if you're interested at living at these apartments, on our website right now, just so that we can keep engaging with you, let you know what project timeline is and things. I was letting Lisa and Eugenia know earlier today that I pull reports monthly now, because I make them leave a comment in there, and I've been reading the comments, and we counted 4 or 5 people who, we have not advertised this by any means, who are asking for 4 bedrooms, and they don't even know if we were building 4 bedrooms. So had I lost the bet, I'd be sitting here being like, see, we should have built 4 bedrooms. But all of that goes to say that is still community engagement, right? That is still straight from the community. And that is actually powerful, because that is people, those are the people that want to live at Nueva Esperanza. And they're telling me right now what their needs are and what they want. And I feel really proud to be like, yeah, we have those, we're going to have them. So.
One thing that for me, I really appreciate Bienestar. Not only, sometimes the engagement can be done in different ways, and they can just report to us what they gather, or just say, this was the survey and here you go. But being able to be part of that presentation, like being the architect in contact and listening exactly what they said and having our own interpretation, was very helpful to be able to convey the design. And also showing them something visual. Maybe it was, of course, not finalized, but they were able to fully understand what we were asking. Like if we were like asking about 2 or 3 options, like showing something was very powerful. And I think it really helps the communication and being able to understand their feedback at the end. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's an excellent presentation, very educational. I have 2 questions. How did you define and select the focus group for this specific Somali community? And the second, I noticed that there is a central laundry facility. Do the units not have washer dryers? And was that a choice by the focus group, or was that a criteria set by the funders?
So the larger units, the 3 and 4 bedrooms, have laundry hookups and a space for the laundry. The laundry rooms are seen more for the 1 and 2 bedrooms, and then the 2 or 3 bedroom, the 3 or 4 bedroom units that choose not to put laundry into their unit. The Somali focus group, I'm going to give that question to Erica.
You asked how we found them, or how we engaged with the groups that we did, specifically Somali. That was, again, Nathan Teskey, who's not here. We had already been involved as an organization. So basically what we did is we leveraged the other part of our organization that is not development. We leveraged those relationships. And so when we found out on the development team side of things that Somali population was increasing in Hillsboro, we went internally to our other side and talked to them, and they passed over that relationship to us. And then that's how we ended up getting in contact with empowerment, the Somali Empowerment Circle. But we already had that connection. It was just on the other side of the shop of Bienestar. All right, are there any more questions? Oh.
How do you design, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna have to do this. How do you tackle introducing diverse building typologies? What's the next part? To bring in a diverse community. So how do you tackle designing different building typologies to bring in a diverse community? Oh, different building typologies. So I could guess that could be seen two different ways. Unit sizes. I mean, basically, like, maybe to harp on what Erica keeps saying is that many developments don't have the larger unit sizes. I first designed for Bienestar, a farm worker housing development, and we had 3 and 4 bedrooms there, and that is very atypical. So I think that is one thing. And so when you look at those building typologies, to do a flat, which is an all 1-story unit as a 4-bedroom, gets kind of spread out. And so that was a bit of a struggle for us. I'm really happy with Eugenia's design and how she came up with the idea of the living room being separate. And so there's this kind of progression through this bigger unit. We also made the townhomes, the 3 bedrooms, all the bedrooms upstairs. You're already going upstairs, as mentioned, to get to your unit. And so kind of segregating them that way to try to make the units a bit more compact. But yeah, working with larger unit sizes, I would say that a lot of focus is on 2 bedrooms right now and not 3 and 4 bedrooms.
Were those all the questions on Zoom?
And I do want to say, because Erica kept saying Lisa, because I'm sitting right next to her, that we are a very collaborative design organization, firm. And Eugenia, I started very early on with the pre-RFP conversations. I'm the leader of our studio. I'm passionate about affordable housing, have relationships. But once we really did start with the design, especially knowing this is a Latinx community organization, it was a very clear opportunity to have Eugenia come in and really lead the design. And it's a huge project, and it's a very complicated project, and she has done an amazing job all the way through. So I just want to absolutely give.
Yeah. And the last tip, I will just say, like, it goes back to the entire team, right? So my partners, my joint venture partners on this HDC really supported community engagement. And because you can meet teams that are just like, all right, let's go. All right, okay, cool, Erica, let's go. Give me the answer. And that was not the partnership, and it's still not the partnership. And we're very collaborative, architects too, and general contractors as well. I went into an OAC this week, and they're just like, are we doing these roof anchors? Are we not? Come on, I need the answer. I'm like, what's a roof anchor again? And so I'm like, can we pause, and can I just ask my maintenance or my property management team if that's important? And they're like, it's going to save the project $70,000. Like, what's there to think about? And I'm like, yeah, but I just need to confirm. So I just want to say to my team in the room, and I know you're here, thank you for allowing me to go back and touch base with the correct people that should be making the decision, even though they're not at that table, every Tuesday at 9 a.m. So yeah, that's another tip for anybody in the room. Thank you all for coming, and I think we can go to happy hour.